Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about transit North Node conjunct one's natal Pluto. Now, we're talking about transits involving the North Node. They can often manifest in issues one may have to confront or address. It may be matters you have to deal with that have been unavoidable, that are simply inevitable, that you may have procrastinated with, but you have maybe no choice but to deal with them and cope at this time and confront them. Now, the thing about this is, since we're talking about Pluto involved with the transit from the North Node, the conjunction from transit North Node to one's natal Pluto, this could be about issues one may have to deal with that are addressed. It could be involving a death. They may actually be dealing, be coping with a death at this time, or they may have to. Sometimes it could be the person in question. It may be somebody that they know. It might be somebody that they're very close with. I mean, say if you have this, I mean, you have your Pluto in your ninth house in your natal chart, and you're getting this transit from the North Node to it. It could be an issue with a life and death situation with an in-law, a grandchild. That you could be experiencing a death with one of those, more of those, one of those people maybe. Uh, I mean, if you have it in your fifth house, it could be one with a child. Fourth house, it could be a prominent family member. It could be someone you feel close to home with. It could be, the less dominant parent, which is often the mother. It could also just be about general crisis situations one may have to cope with. Uh, if it's in your 11th house, the 11th house is associated with with computers and the internet. It could be maybe something just on the internet that might be, you're dealing with, or whether it's a battle with somebody online or what have you. Could sometimes be a virus that you might actually get on the computer. Remember that Pluto is associated with viruses. Not really being flippant here. This is Pluto can be associated with viruses. The 11th house can be associated with the internet and computers. Now, it could also be a time where you might have an issue you have to deal with, where you have to make some kind of transformation, whether you really wanted to or not. If it's in the fifth house, it could be your love life, for example. And also keep in mind that Pluto is also associated with obsessions and things you could be fixated on, compulsions. Pluto is connected with things that are compulsive and obsessive. If you have this in your 12th house, for example, some isolated cases, it can be compulsive, obsessive mental disorder. In isolated cases, even the third house, because the third house corresponds with rational thinking. Uh, this could also be matters with insurance at this time that may need to be dealt with. If there's been an insurance matter that's been delayed, or you've been putting off and procrastinating for whatever reason, this could be the time where you may have to deal with it. It's also, Pluto is associated with support as well, whether it's moral, emotional, monetary support. This could be the time where you either are in a situation where you actually need it. If you're a person that's, I won't say egocentric, a person that has a lot of pride, and say like you have like a dominant Leo chart, or you're somebody that doesn't really want, you don't have it in you to really ask for it. It could be the time where you might have no choice, where it's inevitable that you have to say, look, I need your assistance, I need your support, whether it's monetary, emotional, or what have you. Sometimes this could be about secrets being unveiled. Say it could be an issue that you may deal with that comes to a point where you're actually able to address an issue regarding a secret. Maybe it's unveiled at this time. If you have it, say, in your fourth house in your natal chart, you have transit North Node conjunct your natal Pluto in the fourth house. It could be some secret that might be coming out, that might be unveiled at this time, that needs to be addressed, where you don't really, I mean, where there's really no other choice in the matter. It could be corruption or crime situation that may need to be dealt with. Say if you have this in your third house, It could be something in your neighborhood, maybe, or some issue could be with a neighbor, or maybe even a sibling or a cousin that might be involved in criminal activity in some isolated cases. Now, and also, too, that Pluto is also going back to viruses. It's interesting. I'm not going to talk about the same exact transit, but some of you may have heard of a prolific actress Alyssa Milano when she had the coronavirus. Now, at that time, she didn't have transit North Node conjunct natal Pluto, but she had transit Pluto, at least in loose conjunction to her natal North Node, and that could be about issues one may have to address with a coronavirus or a virus in general, and that is what had transpired at the time that she had. And being in Capricorn, the sign that's connected with despondency and depressive energy, it's very despondent energy. It probably brought her down a little bit more than the average person. Could also be about issues with power and control that one may have to deal with. There's even stalking in some cases. If you have an issue that you've been, you feel that somebody in isolated cases that's been stalking you, whether it's an ex-lover or what have you, this is the time where maybe the person is actually unveiled, or there's an arrest made on this. And say if you have this, like say in your 12th house, the 12th house is what's hidden. If it's somebody that you haven't been able to really identify, this could be a time where it might come to a head and you're able to take care of the situation and unveil who this person may be. And also to remember that Pluto in astrology anatomically corresponds with the bladder, colon, prostate, and pelvic region. Now, especially say if you have this in the 1st or 6th house in your natal chart, this could be issues that you may need to deal with. That could be health related with one or more of those things that I just described. So anyway, also too, let's take an example like with me. I mean, let's say I have my natal Pluto and Virgo in my 5th house. Now, let's say I have the transit North Node makes a conjunction to that point. Well, perhaps it could manifest for me and anyone else that may have that placement that I just described. It could be about obsession, fixated energy, which is Pluto, and perhaps analytical, intellectual, which is Virgo, then amusement or enjoyment, which is the 5th house. And also what I do, like when I do my football predictions during the football season, sometimes I'll be extrapolating data and trying to project numbers for some stats for the next game and the next week of games, I should say. So it could be issues that I may have to deal with regarding whether I may be overly fixated with that energy or what have you. If I actually had a child, it could be an issue connected with the death of a child, or a child may be going through some obsessive compulsive issues his or herself, but I do not have a child, so, and I don't have a lover, so those are not, it's not applicable for me at the moment. But anyway, Pluto in astrology, when you're talking about the transit North Node in astrology, it can often be about matters with timing. It could manifest in impeccable timing, being in the right place at the right time. Since we're talking about Pluto, say you have, it could be a very excellent period for getting a loan from a bank, matters with estates. It could be a loan from a friend even. Insurance matter may be easier to be dealt with at this time. It could come to a head. Say if you have this in Pluto in the 11th house, for example, this could be something where it could be an opportune or ideal time to get that support from a friend, or even if it's not monetary, it might be moral or emotional. Now, a lot of this, of course, could be predicated and dependent on aspects that are made to this point in your chart. If you've got a lot of adverse aspects, these things might be a little bit more difficult, even though you're having this transit take place. Of course, if this makes an adverse aspect to Saturn, that might make it might be some more delays and obstructions that are involved in these things that I'm talking about as far as the transit North Node conjoining one's natal Pluto. Now, another thing too is that keep in mind it could also be issues, like I said, another example could be dealing with the stalker in some isolated cases, or it could be trying, it could be gaining power or control in your life depending on what house this falls in. And there's really, and then again, it can really be about dealing with impeccable timing, and also too, if it's in your 12th house, that could be about a time where you're unveiling people that were a very good period for bringing out people that were actually hidden adversaries that were posing as friends. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now another thing too is that when you're talking about this transit North Node conjunct one's natal Pluto, it's also, remember, the North Node is associated with one's future and destiny. So this could be a time where it might be there might be some kind of destiny, or you feel it's preordained, or your future you tied into something Pluto related. It could be a Pluto-like profession. It could be working as a coroner or someone with the occult, which includes astrology, something with transformation like recycling. It might be some other professions. It could be something where you're doing some kind of investigation or psychology or psychiatry, especially say if this falls in the second, sixth, or 10th house in your natal chart, because those are the money houses, the work houses in one's chart. Now, another thing too is that this is also, I mean, going back, if this does fall in your first or sixth house, this could be about some issues, with the, transformation. First house could be, it might be your future tied into the transformation of the physical body, or even if you have it in your sixth house, the sixth house is connected with physical health. So the transformation of the physical health could manifest very, very similar or the same. You have it in the first house, or at least similarly if you have it in the sixth house compared to your first house, because the sixth house has other meanings besides in contrast to the first house. So, but as far as physically, it can manifest in some transformation of your physical health. It could be working out vigorously. If you have it in Scorpio, say, it could be done with a lot of passion, emotional intensity, as well, very relentless energy. Now, another thing too, when you're talking about the transit North Node conjunct one's natal Pluto, it's also the transit of the North Node could be about the development of qualities. In this case, the qualities associated with the sign and the planet, the sign, the house that this falls in one's natal chart. I mean, if you have this fall in your 8th house, for example, it could be about digging deep, doing something with deep research, with a lot, and doing so very relentlessly, passionately, which is Scorpio, and it could be something 8th house related, like astrology, the occult, supernatural. It could be investigating a death or credit card issue. It could be over an inheritance at this time. If there's something where you haven't, where you've gone stagnant and haven't done anything in terms of an investigation with that, and it was something that needed to be done, that could be the opportune time to do so. And again, going back to, if this makes, say if you have this transit while it's contacting your natal Pluto, and say at the same time if it's making a sextile or trine, even a conjunction perhaps to your natal Jupiter, it could be a period which could be very, more prosperity, especially if this is something where you're doing something monetary related, or if it's more, or even if you're asking for a loan, you might wind up getting more than what you anticipated, because, you're talking about Jupiter is the planet of luck and fortune and prosperity. It's very fortuitous. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.